Good evening and welcome to News News. I'm Babs Egan.
And I'm Mike Robinson. We're here to bring you more than the up-to-date.
Tonight's special report, U.S. annexes Canada and Mexico. Here's our Washington correspondent, Peter Fend, with further details.
I'm reporting here from the State Department, and I'm reporting that the administration has declared its intention to annex Mexico and Canada. We had long understood that the Canadian government would accede to such annexation because of their internal problems, Quebec breaking away, perhaps joining with the Northeast, British Columbia already breaking away, refusing to pay the tax. The question was whether Mexico would cooperate. Here at the State Department, there are still negotiations going on with the Mexican government, and we have here, for example, the Prime Minister of Mexico, who is wondering whether it would be to Mexico's advantage to join with us in a new 52-state nation. Right. Now, what is your objection, perhaps, to the annexation of Mexico by the United States? Do you feel this would somehow undo the last war of 1848, or?
No, not really. I think that the people would end up picking grapes in California.
Well, they already are picking grapes in California, as I understand. In fact, this would give them a minimum wage.
Oh, well, not much.
Not much of a minimum wage?
They would just get a bum deal.
Well, we
should just sell the oil to the Americans and stay where we are.
Well, that was actually the intention of the whole treaty, was to have a sale of oil to the United States within the U.S. market rather than to have an external exchange.
No, of course not.
Well, we seem to have some resistance on the part of the Mexicans. However, it's been reported by our military officials that there should be no difficulty in quelling any uprising on the part of the Mexicans. I'm sorry to say. This is at least what I hear from our official releases. What would you have to say about any military invasion or action in the Mexican territory?
Well, it depends on the invasion. If they use nuclear weapons, we have no chance.
Well, we may use other sorts of weapons, like psychological weapons.
LSD?
We can make Spanish become the official language. I understand from the administration that Spanish would be the official language of the United States, along with English and French. The United States now, of course, encompassing all of North America. The logic, as we argue, is strictly historical. Now, we must remember that in 1775, the U.S. was just taking form, and it almost invaded and almost conquered Canada. It lost at the Battle of Quebec. It was its first military defeat for the United States. And we don't like to lose. We don't intend to lose in this case either. And if we were not to have lost that war in Quebec, then we would have, of course, then quelled any British hold on the northern part of North America, preventing any then formation of British North America and present-day Canada. So the annexation of Canada makes a lot of sense. It's simply the completion of the battle we temporarily lost in 1775. Now, as far as the activities in 1848 are concerned in Mexico, we must understand again that we won the war, right? Okay, but only the Europeans prevented us from completing the annexation of this territory, achieving a true United States of North America. Now, don't you feel that that sort of historical drift or tendency is justified in a comprehensive plan for all the
it's not justified. This part here is not even justified to this day. So taking over the whole thing would be out of the question.
So you do not wish to resort to diplomatic measures?
No.
You would rather have the consequences?
Why not?
Well, I'm sorry to say that the State Department will be absolving its responsibilities in the Mexican sector. We'll have to have the Defense Department assume the task.
Thank you, Peter, for your analysis. And now, we continue the story in the Far East, where Japan objects to the North American Confederation.
Taro, sit down.
Do we have that story yet? We have the ambassador of Japan, Taro Suzuki. Taro, do we have that yet?
Since the termination of World War III, the Treaty of Milano, and the subsequent annexation of Alaska by the Pacific Federation of Japan, the U.S. has shown increasing hostility towards us. I refer, of course, to the recent incidents of sabotage of the Mizumaki pipeline and the terrorist activities directed against our diplomats. We have acted on these issues with patience and humanity. Now, however, with the proposed U.S. imperialist expansion over the entire continent of North America, the Pacific Federation must strongly protest. It is, as you say, the last straw. This outrageous proposal is a clear violation of the Treaty of Milano. I refer to the Articles 13 and 43. Article 13 states, the U.S. government or private U.S. enterprise shall not interfere with or involve itself in any way whatsoever with the energy development, production, or distribution of any other nation or territory. The so-called annexation of Canada and Mexico is an obvious effort to circumvent these rules and exploit the energy resources of these independent nations. Article 43 states, the U.S. shall not maintain a standing military and is specifically prohibited from endeavoring in operations of covert intelligence or of paramilitary nature. This so-called annexation of Mexico, this so-called agreement, does it not harken back previous U.S. imperialist involvement with the infamous CIA in Central and South America? Remember Chile. Remember Argentina. Now we are forced again to remember the Alamo. We, the Pacific Federation of Japan, deplore and emphatically denounce this act of imperialism disguised as diplomacy. We are prepared to use force if necessary to uphold the articles of the Treaty of Milano.
Thank you, Taro. Now, more on the U.S. military intervention in Mexico and Canada.
You unplug that.
Are they rolling tape? Oh. Because
There
of,
you go. Thank you.
because of increased hazardous Mexican oil spills, the U.S. government has found it necessary to intervene in the affairs of our southern neighbor in behalf of both North and South American interests. The internationally dangerous pollution spread and the rise of Cuban-aided guerrilla forces threatening the economic stability of Mexico have forced Capitol Hill to reconsider its role in North America. Because of ensuing Mexican Civil War, Mexico has been unable to pay unimposed fines against oil spills. Mexico retaliated against the fines by raising oil prices beyond fair trade agreements. This mandated the friendly yet firm intercedence of the U.S. on behalf of the Mexican government, reactivating Roosevelt's good neighbor policy of the 40s and resulting in the present annexation of Mexico. In Canada today, the U.S. was called upon by members of the Canadian Parliament and the succeeding province of Quebec to act as an arbitrator in the Canadian talks. Canada has been engaged in a long and bloody civil war that has plunged it into economic and social disorder. The U.S. sees the probable annexation of Canada within the next month to be the necessary step in restoring North American economic and environmental harmony. Troops have been deployed as a safety measure to British Columbia and Baja.
Is that my cue? Thank you, Babs. The drought rages on. Where's our weatherman with the report? Are we ready with that report? Weatherman Jim.
Yes, by all indications, we will have very severe drought this summer, the way it's shaping up. It started up in Saskatchewan, as you remember, when they started seeding those clouds for the new farm fields. They started up there, and it had the domino effect, apparently. We've lost all our rain. We need at least 30 inches before summer, or else we're going to be on severe rationing again, which will mean, as in the drought of '81, if you remember, when we lost 40% of the city to fire, and most of the population went to the Great Lakes cities, that there will be electric shocks. There will be distributed through the toilet system if you flush the toilet. Also, there will be severe penalties financially. And you will need parasols, remember that. Now the whole eastern portion here will be evacuated by June, with the population moving out towards the Midwest to draw water from the Great Lakes states. Now, if you remember the great drought of '81 and the water riots, you know that you would like to be on this evacuation also, so make your plans and be ready for it. And we have some footage back from the great drought of '81 that we'd like to show you, just to remind you what it is when the city goes dry. Yeah. Do we have that tape rolling? No. Well, you know, they abandoned the highway system basically since there was nobody left. They'd all moved to Chicago, and we're still trying to get the people back, and we're just going to end up all going back out to Chicago again. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they let this happen in Saskatchewan in the first place, but here we are, we're stuck with it, right? And people just don't take it seriously, if you know what I mean. I mean, there were people shot over opening fire hydrants, and it'll happen again. We just have to be ready for it. I mean, start now. And we are soliciting your water-saving slogans for the day. We'll give you a slogan later on, and each person gets their water bag in the mail. Plastic, empty. You have to find your source. Are we ready on the tape now? Just to remind you what it was like.
The severe drought of the 80s has continued in its 15-year cycle. Our weather cycle is cold, only 100 days capacity left. Once again, cities are forced to use polluted river and tributary supplies. New York City, shattered by the first drought in the early 80s, compared its use of the Hudson River to bathing in the Ganges. Since the early 80s, continued government deregulation of pollution, restraints on business, and the eradication of agencies such as EPA and OSHA has created a grave health hazard with the drought. Disease caused by contaminated drinking water may reach plague proportions, warn health officials. In 1980, Massachusetts alone was forced to shut down 26 public water sources because of chemical contamination from dumping. Increased use of coal and fossil fuels have created a traveling blanket of smog that is a key factor in aggravating already diminished sunlight and rainfall. Acid rain and drought has severely damaged cash crops such as wheat, corn, and soybean crops this year. Land erosion in North America over the last 100 years has reached levels that surpass the Dust Bowl days of the 30s, said Missouri Soil Conservation Officer from Monroe County, John Turner. I think it's highly unlikely that our great-grandchildren will believe that there was ever a surplus of food in this country. Satellite monitoring of international environmental changes and pollution spread may offer some hope in solving this problem in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Jim. New humane methods of detainment for prisoners are in the works. A new pill has recently been developed to detain felons with the expensive employment of guards and prison walls, saving billions of dollars. With us is Dr. Mangeler, inventor of the pill. Doctor, is it true that when the pill is swallowed, it lodges in the stomach lining and will detonate itself if the prisoner steps beyond an electrically restricted area?
It's true. It's very true. We have this tiny little pill here, which looks like this. Can we have a close-up on that? This pill, in the moment when it gets activated, and which is swallowed by the prisoner, or we call him patient. And here we have a sender. When the patient goes out of the range of this sender, he will become unconsciousness, or if we gain the strongness of the sender, he will die. Here we have our little patient, and I can demonstrate you right now. This little sender is specially for this studio made, and it has only a range of a few feet. So if the person, he swallowed it already, this tiny capsule like this is probably here. You also can, come down. You can put it in the brain up here, or you can ingest it in bones every time. Anyway, I demonstrated that this goes for 4 feet. If he goes out of this range, he will collapse. Step on, little fella. Go up, step on. Take a few steps, please. Take a few steps. It doesn't hurt. You just come back. You take a few steps, but a little bit more, a little bit more. You see, it works perfectly. It's a perfect advice. We never use prison guards, weapons, walls, dogs. We don't need all this shit anymore. Just this little tiny pill. That's all. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And wait for my next invention.
Thank you, Dr. Mangeler. Giselle Langkamp brings us a report on crime factors in the last decade. Giselle?
Thank you, Bab. In the early 80s, increased crime resulting from factors such as unemployment, inflation, drought, famine, and disease were responsible for the increased use of national law enforcement. As early as 1981, New York City police official John Santucci had described state prisons as running at 100% capacity. Said Santucci at that time, the criminal justice system can be likened to a memorial hospital treatment center for cancer, and that the flood of arrests had turned the courts into turnstile justice. This phrase has often been erroneously attributed to outraged transit riders over fare hikes who have leapt the gates. During the early 80s, televising of court cases became legal. Abscams became legal. Political protests of one or more persons became illegal under the Kennedy crime bill. And the catastrophic drought of 1981 enabled government, state, and local authorities to enforce strict population control in private and public sectors. As a result of North America's diminishing resource base, both inflation and population control increased at a rapid rate. Tonight we have with us Mr. Gregory Lehman to discuss a new and important development that has recently come over the newswire. Mr. Lehman, what is the nature of this story?
Yes, Giselle, something terribly serious has occurred. The UPI wire has just announced something of drastic proportion. A grand jury in Washington, D.C. has handed down an indictment of major import. It appears that included in the indictments are former vice Iran, SAVAK, the Philippine Secret Police, South African's intelligence agencies, Chilean Secret Police DINA, amongst others. The agreement encouraged the exchange of information between the various organizations, as well as an agreement that would allow for foreign agents to carry out assassinations within the United States, as well as provisions that would provide for the preventing of prosecutions in the event of any arrests.
Thank you, Mr. Lehman. And now back to Babs and Mike.
And this concludes tonight's News. I'm Babs Egan.
And I'm Mike Robinson. We wish you a very, very happy evening.
Oh, we still have more time. Okay.
3 or 4 minutes. Well, Babs, those certainly are explosive charges that Mr. Lehman is making, wouldn't you say, in his new book?
It's horrifying to find out the truth.
Mr. Lehman, I wonder why you say in your report that all these secret services had to team up together to carry out this assassination. What's the matter? Is not our, if I understand you right, are you saying that our CIA isn't good enough to do an assassination all by itself?
Mr. Robinson, it's not a question of what I am saying. Rather, it is a question of criminal charges. It is a question of what the grand jury has stated in their indictments. It is not a question of my news report. This is something that goes far beyond opinion. This is criminal allegations, Mr. Robinson. And this will have to be determined within the confines of a court. A jury will have to determine whether or not guilt is to be, has actually occurred here or not. And this is the standard procedure. And
Well, Mr. Lehman is being overruled here. Space Force will take over. We don't need any more juries. We will have all the jury, all the judgment be left to outer space. we will return to outer space as Taro Suzuki has vowed and move beyond either Japan or the U.S. into a space state.
Outer space.
The Space Force, sponsored by Ocean Earth Construction and Development Corporation, OECD, will allow us all to be the jury, judging the affairs of the world. Taro Suzuki has suggested an art air force. It has been expanded into a space force, and the Space Force, sponsored by OECD, shall make the world of trials and tribulations, and juries and judges over. No more, we can all see.
Space police.
And Space Force reunites the world in a whole.
Okay, that's it.
The party's over.
Oh, how did you know? Yeah, look how oh, so sorry. I see. Oh, yeah?
Same time, yeah. It's really neat. It's like up the race button.
Yeah?
This is their time.
Just do that. That's funny. I wonder why that happened. I just couldn't have I did that. I know, yeah. I did sort of, but not.